that the world has already forgotten.
5 signs, 1 city, 0 coincidence. 5 impossible things are happening in Jerusalem right now. Not symbolic, not metaphorical, actually happening, physically, measurably, documented. And according to prophecy written over 2,000 years ago, these 5 things had to align before the final countdown could begin. First sign, the priesthood has returned. Men with proven genetic lineage to Aaron, the first high priest of Israel. DNA confirmed. 3,000 years of unbroken bloodline. They're not studying history, they're training for temple service, learning sacrificial rituals, memorizing every detail from ancient texts, as if they know they'll need this knowledge soon. Second sign, the altar stands ready. In 2018, a group built a biblically accurate altar for burnt offerings, not in a museum, not as art, as a functioning platform constructed exactly according to the specifications given to Moses. Unhewn stones from Jerusalem's hills, the right dimensions, the correct design. They've already conducted rehearsal ceremonies. Fire has burned on its surface. Third sign, the sacred vessels exist. Golden menorahs, silver trumpets, priestly garments woven according to Exodus chapter 28, incense altars, basins, everything needed for temple worship has been recreated by the Temple Institute in Jerusalem. Ready, waiting, complete. Fourth sign, 5 red heifers are alive in Israel. Not random cattle, specific animals bred to meet the exact requirements from Numbers chapter 19, without blemish, pure red, needed for the purification ritual before temple service can begin. They're being guarded 24 hours a day, and in 2026, they reach the perfect age for sacrifice. Fifth sign, the council has reformed. The Sanhedrin, the supreme religious authority that governed Israel's spiritual life for centuries, disbanded after Rome destroyed the temple in 70 AD, gone for nearly 2,000 years. Except, they came back in 2004. 71 rabbis and scholars meeting in Tiberias, the same city where the last Sanhedrin convened before disappearing into history. They have one stated mission: prepare for the rebuilding of the Third Temple. Now here's where this gets unsettling. Each of these 5 signs alone would be remarkable, but all 5 existing at the same time? That's never happened before. Not in the entire span of Jewish history since the Second Temple fell. For 2,000 years, Israel had none of these things. No priesthood, no altar, no vessels, no red heifers, no Sanhedrin. Now they have all 5, simultaneously. And the prophet Daniel wrote about a specific sequence of events that would unfold when these preparations were complete. A covenant made, a sacrifice begun, and then, in the middle of 7 years, something that would shake the world. He called it the abomination of desolation. Jesus referenced it, warned his followers to watch for it, said, "When you see it happen, you'll know the end is near." But before any of that can happen, the stage has to be set, the pieces have to be in place, the preparations have to be complete. And in our lifetime, in this generation, all 5 signs are converging in Jerusalem. The city hasn't seen anything like this in 2 millennia, and according to the prophets, once all 5 signs appear together, a clock starts ticking, not metaphorically, actually. Daniel called it 70 weeks, a period of precisely defined time leading to a precisely defined conclusion. And somewhere in Jerusalem right now, that clock may have already begun its countdown. You won't see this on the evening news. World leaders aren't discussing it at summits, but in the shadow of the Temple Mount, preparations continue, quietly, systematically, prophetically. 5 signs, 1 city, and 0 chance it's all coincidence. Because prophecy doesn't deal in coincidence, it deals with appointments, specific times, predetermined moments. And every prophet who wrote about the last days said to watch Jerusalem, watch for these signs, and when you see them converging, look up, because what comes next isn't written in newspapers. It's written in Daniel, in Ezekiel, in Revelation, and it's unfolding right now.
Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more awe-inspiring stories of faith, survival, and miracles.
The red heifers arrived in Israel on September 15, 2022. 5 animals, flown from a ranch in Texas, met at the airport by rabbis, security personnel, and a veterinary team that had been preparing for months. The media barely noticed. A few religious news sites ran brief stories, then silence. But in certain circles in Jerusalem, that day marked something far more significant than another livestock shipment. It marked the beginning of a countdown that's been anticipated for 2,000 years. Because these aren't ordinary cattle. According to Numbers chapter 19, before any priest can serve in the temple, before any sacrifice can be offered on the altar, a specific purification ritual must be performed, and that ritual requires the ashes of a red heifer, not brown, not spotted, completely red, without blemish, never yoked, never worked. The requirements are so specific that finding even one animal that qualifies is extraordinarily rare. These 5 heifers were born red, examined constantly, monitored for any disqualifying mark. 3 years of careful breeding produced them, and now they're in Israel, grazing in a secure location in the Negev desert, watched 24 hours a day by guards and cameras. Because if anything happens to these animals before they reach maturity, the entire timeline shifts. The Temple Institute explains it simply on their website. The red heifer is the key to reinstating biblical purity. Without it, access to the Temple Mount for divine service remains impossible. Divine service, not symbolic worship, not prayer from a distance, actual temple service, sacrifices on an altar, priests in the Holy of Holies, the system described in Leviticus, dormant since 70 AD, waiting to restart. And the biological clock determining when that can happen is ticking inside 5 animals that most of the world doesn't even know exist. Here's the timeline that matters. A red heifer must be at least 3 years old for the ritual. According to Jewish law, that's when the animal reaches maturity. Before 3 years, it's too young. After a certain age, it becomes too old, and small imperfections that disqualify it may appear. The window is precise, the timing is critical. Do the math. September 2022 arrival. 3 years forward, September 2025 would mark the earliest possible date for the ritual. We're past that now, which means any day, according to biblical law, these heifers could be used. But there's another factor. The priests preparing to perform this ceremony want everything perfect, not just legally acceptable, perfect. So they're watching, waiting, consulting with rabbis and scholars about the exact optimal moment. Sources close to the Temple Institute suggest they're looking at spring 2026, specifically around Passover, the same season when the original Passover lamb was sacrificed in Egypt, the same season when Jesus was crucified, the same season when, according to prophecy, the final redemption is supposed to begin. Passover 2026. Mark it. But here's what makes this even more significant. The red heifer isn't the only biological clock running. In Jerusalem, young men in their 20s and 30s are training for priesthood, Kohanim, confirmed through genetic testing as descendants of Aaron. They're studying the ancient texts, learning the rituals, practicing the movements. Their bodies are the vessels through which this service will be performed. They can't do this forever. There's a window of physical capability, peak years for the demanding work of temple service, lifting animals, standing for hours, performing intricate rituals with precision. The generation currently training won't wait forever. They're ready now, in their prime, and their readiness coincides almost perfectly with the maturation of the 5 red heifers. 2 biological clocks, both reaching their optimal moment simultaneously. What are the odds?
Then there's the political clock. Right now, Israel has a government coalition that includes religious parties with significant influence. These groups support temple preparations. They're not actively pushing for immediate access to the Temple Mount, but they're not opposing the groundwork either. Political coalitions shift. Elections happen. The current window of religious influence may not last, so there's pressure, not just spiritual, practical, political. A sense that conditions favorable for these preparations might not exist in 5 years or 10 years, but they exist now. And then there's the geologic clock. Seismologists have been warning for years that the Dead Sea Transform Fault, which runs directly beneath Jerusalem and the Mount of Olives, is overdue for a major earthquake. Studies suggest a significant event is statistically likely within the next decade. The prophet Zechariah described this earthquake. He said when the Messiah returns, his feet will touch the Mount of Olives, and the mountain will split in two, east to west, creating a valley. Geologists confirm that the fault line runs exactly east to west through the Mount of Olives. If it ruptures, the mountain would split precisely as Zechariah described, 25 centuries before anyone understood plate tectonics. So you have 4 clocks ticking simultaneously: biological, physical, political, geological, all of them pointing to a window between now and 2026. The red heifers reaching maturity, the priests reaching their prime, the political conditions favorable, the fault line building pressure. 4 independent timelines converging on the same narrow window. And in Jerusalem, preparations continue. The altar stands ready, the vessels are complete, the Sanhedrin meets regularly, and 5 red animals graze in the desert, their DNA tested, their pedigrees confirmed, their purpose singular. They don't know they're part of prophecy. They're just cattle eating grass, growing toward a date marked on calendars in Jerusalem. But the men watching them know. The priests training for the ritual know. The rabbis calculating the timelines know. 2026 isn't just another year, it's a convergence point, when biological possibility meets prophetic necessity. And once that ritual is performed, once those ashes exist, the final barrier to temple service disappears. Then comes the question nobody wants to ask, the question that keeps Israeli security officials awake at night, the question that has the potential to ignite the entire Middle East. What happens when someone actually tries to sacrifice on the Temple Mount?
35 acres. That's all it is. A limestone plateau in the middle of Jerusalem. Roughly the size of 20 city blocks. You could walk around its perimeter in 15 minutes. And yet, this small patch of ground has more diplomatic files, more UN resolutions, more security protocols, and more potential for global conflict than any other location on Earth. The Temple Mount, Haram al-Sharif, the noble sanctuary. Even its name is contested. To Jews, it's the holiest site in Judaism, the place where Abraham bound Isaac, where Solomon built the first temple, where the presence of God dwelt in the Holy of Holies, the geographical center of their faith for 3,000 years. To Muslims, it's the third holiest site in Islam, the place where Muhammad ascended to heaven on the night journey, home to the Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque, sacred ground for over 13 centuries. 2 religions, 2 claims, 1 mountain. And caught between them, every nation on earth watching nervously because they know what happens if this powder keg ignites. Right now, access to the Temple Mount is controlled by an Islamic trust called the Waqf, under Jordanian oversight. Israel controls security around the perimeter, but doesn't interfere with religious administration on the mount itself. This arrangement, called the status quo, has held since 1967, when Israel captured Jerusalem during the Six-Day War. For nearly 60 years, it's been a fragile balance. Jews can visit the mount, but cannot pray there. No religious objects, no ritual items, no visible acts of worship. Israeli police enforce this strictly to prevent riots. Muslims pray there freely,
5 times a day, the call to prayer echoes from Al-Aqsa's minarets. The Dome of the Rock, with its golden roof, dominates Jerusalem's skyline. This is the compromise, the arrangement that keeps the peace. But it's breaking down. Over the past 5 years, the number of Jews visiting the Temple Mount has increased dramatically. Religious groups that once avoided the site out of concerns about ritual purity are now organizing regular visits. Some rabbis who previously forbade stepping on the mount have changed their positions. Why? Because preparations for temple service are advancing, and at some point the question becomes unavoidable. If you have priests, an altar, vessels, and red heifer ashes, where exactly do you plan to use them? Not in some symbolic location, not in a replica built elsewhere, on the mount itself, where the temple stood, where prophecy says the third temple will rise. The Israeli government knows this is coming. They've been trying to manage it, control the pressure, maintain the status quo, but the pressure builds. In 2022, the Temple Institute announced they had completed training programs for over 200 Kohanim, priests ready to serve. In 2023, they conducted a full Passover sacrifice rehearsal near the mount, complete with fire, blood, and wine. Each year, the demonstrations grow larger, more organized, more confident, and each time, the response from the Muslim world grows louder. The Palestinian Authority has warned repeatedly that any attempt to alter the status quo on the Temple Mount will trigger a religious war. Jordan, as custodian of the Islamic holy sites, issues condemnations. Turkey's president calls attempts at Jewish prayer on the Mount a red line. From Tehran to Istanbul to Cairo, millions watch Jerusalem with growing anxiety, because they understand what many in the West don't. This isn't about politics, it's about identity. It's about promises made by God, and people don't compromise on those. The prophet Zechariah saw this exact scenario. He wrote that Jerusalem would become a cup of trembling for all surrounding peoples, that it would be a burdensome stone that injures everyone who tries to move it. Read the news from the last decade. Count how many peace plans have failed, how many summits have collapsed, how many agreements have dissolved into violence. Every American president tries, every European Union envoy negotiates, every UN resolution attempts to solve it, and every single effort fails, because you can't negotiate what prophecy has ordained. The mountain sits there, silent, waiting, 35 acres holding the world hostage. Israeli archaeologists believe they've located the exact spot where the Holy of Holies once stood. Ground-penetrating radar, historical documents, measurements from ancient texts. They think they know precisely where the altar should be rebuilt. That spot is currently occupied, not by the Dome of the Rock, which sits slightly to the north, but open plaza space that Muslims consider part of the sacred precinct. Some Jewish scholars argue that you could rebuild the temple without touching the Islamic structures. The plaza is large enough, the temples could coexist. But try explaining that to 1 billion Muslims who see any Jewish construction on the Mount as desecration. And try explaining to Jewish religious Jews that they'll remain barred from their holiest site forever, while every preparation for temple service is complete except access to the one place that matters. The tension is unsustainable. Everyone knows it. In 2021, clashes on the Temple Mount during Ramadan triggered an 11-day war between Israel and Hamas. Rockets, airstrikes, international crisis, all starting from a dispute about prayer rights on 35 acres of limestone. That was just access to the Mount. Imagine what happens if someone actually tries to sacrifice there. The Israeli security establishment has war-gamed this scenario countless times. They know that any unauthorized Jewish religious activity on the Mount would likely trigger immediate riots in Jerusalem, protests across the West Bank, condemnations from every Muslim-majority nation, and potential military responses from groups like Hezbollah and Iran. It could ignite the entire region in hours. So, right now, the government maintains the status quo through force. Police remove any Jew who bows their head or moves their lips in prayer on the Mount. Arrests are common. The rules are strict. But here's the problem. The rules are becoming harder to enforce as the movement grows, and eventually, one of three things will happen. Either the government will have to violently suppress its own religious citizens to maintain peace with the Muslim world, or they'll have to grant access and face regional war, or something will happen that makes them the decision. An earthquake, perhaps, one that damages the Islamic structures, one that, according to Zechariah, splits the Mount of Olives and reshapes Jerusalem's landscape. Geologists say it's not if, but when. The fault line beneath the mount has been building pressure for centuries. Historical records show major earthquakes in the region roughly 400 years. The last big one was in 1927, nearly a century ago. The clock is ticking underground, too. And when that pressure releases, when the ground shakes and structures fall and the landscape changes, the political calculations change with it. Because in chaos, things become possible that were impossible in stability. The altar is ready. The priests are trained, the red heifers are maturing, and the mountain waits. 35 acres holding prophecy back. 35 acres standing between this age and whatever comes next. How much longer can it hold?
In 1997, a team of geneticists published a paper that shouldn't have been possible. They had tested the DNA of Jewish men from communities scattered across the globe, men who had never met, whose families had been separated for centuries, some from Israel, some from Yemen, others from Europe, North Africa, and the former Soviet Union. These men had nothing in common except one thing. They all claimed descent from the ancient Jewish priesthood. They all carried the surname Cohen, or variations of it, Khan, Kogan, Cowan. And according to tradition passed down through thousands of years, these families were supposed to be direct male descendants of Aaron, the brother of Moses, the first high priest of Israel, the man who stood before the burning bush, who held the staff that became a serpent, who entered the Holy of Holies on the Day of Atonement. That lineage supposedly traced back 3,300 years, over 130 generations, through exile in Babylon, dispersion across the Roman Empire, the Spanish Inquisition, the Holocaust, centuries of persecution, migration, and assimilation. Common sense said the bloodline would have been diluted beyond recognition, mixed with countless other populations, lost in the chaos of history. The geneticists expected to find exactly that, random variation, no connection, a tradition maintained through cultural memory but not biological reality. Instead, they found something that made them rewrite their conclusions multiple times. The Kohanim, regardless of where they lived or what community they came from, shared a distinctive genetic signature on their Y chromosome, a marker passed exclusively through the male line, father to son, generation after generation. They called it the Cohen modal haplotype, and roughly 70% of men identifying as Kohanim carried it. The statistical probability of this happening by chance was astronomical. This wasn't cultural tradition. This was genetic proof of an unbroken patrilineal line stretching back millennia. Dr. Karl Skorecki, one of the lead researchers, described the moment they realized what they'd found. We were shocked. The data showed a clear pattern that couldn't be explained by anything other than common ancestry. They ran the tests again, expanded the sample size, brought in additional researchers. The results held. Jewish priests weren't a myth. They weren't a symbolic designation. They were a biological reality, a genetic priesthood that had somehow survived everything history threw at them. The scientific paper, published in the journal Nature, sent shockwaves through both the scientific and religious communities. Because this wasn't supposed to happen. Populations mix, lineages blur. After 3,000 years and dozens of dispersions, any ancestral genetic marker should have been scattered into statistical noise. but the priests remained distinct, identifiable, traceable. One researcher compared it to finding a river that flowed underground for thousands of miles and emerged unchanged. It defied every expectation we had about population genetics. The implications were staggering. If the priestly lineage was real, what else from those ancient texts might be historically accurate? If families really had preserved this identity through 130 generations, what did that say about the power of tradition, of covenant, of promises made in the desert 3 millennia ago? Orthodox Jewish communities weren't surprised. They'd always known, but now they had something they'd never had before: scientific validation, genetic proof that could be tested in any lab in the world. The Cohen modal haplotype became more than an academic curiosity. It became evidence, physical, measurable, undeniable evidence that the priesthood described in Exodus and Leviticus wasn't legend. It was history, and it was still alive. But the story didn't end there. In 2009, researchers conducted follow-up studies with improved genetic testing methods. They refined the original findings and discovered something even more precise. The common ancestor of the Kohanim lived approximately 3,000 years ago, right around the time tradition places Aaron in the wilderness of Sinai. Not metaphorically, actually. The genetic clock pointed to the exact historical period described in Exodus. Dr. Skarecki later reflected on the discovery's significance. We're seeing a biological record of an historical event. The formation of the Jewish priesthood can be dated genetically to the same period described in religious texts. Science hadn't set out to prove the Bible, but in tracing genetic markers through time, it had accidentally confirmed one of Scripture's most specific claims. The priests were real, their lineage was preserved, and they were still here. This matters now more than ever because of what's happening in Jerusalem. When the Temple Institute began training Kohanim for future temple service, they didn't just accept anyone who claimed priestly descent, they verified it. Genetic testing became part of the screening process. The young men learning to offer sacrifices, to handle the sacred vessels, to perform the rituals described in Leviticus aren't role-playing. They're not actors in a historical reenactment. They're genetically confirmed descendants of the men who performed these exact same rituals 3,000 years ago. Their DNA proves it. Think about what that means. The priests standing ready in Jerusalem today carry the same genetic markers as the priests who served in Solomon's temple, the same bloodline that served when Ezekiel prophesied, when Daniel interpreted dreams, when Jesus walked through the temple courts. An unbroken chain of descent, preserved through every exile, every persecution, every attempt to erase Jewish identity from the earth. And now, after 2 millennia of silence, that priesthood is preparing to serve again. The prophet Malachi saw this moment. He wrote that before the great and terrible day of the Lord, the sons of Levi would be purified like gold and silver, that they would once again present offerings in righteousness. For generations, that seemed like poetry, symbolic language about spiritual restoration. But when you have genetic proof that the sons of Levi still exist, when you have actual descendants of Aaron being trained for actual temple service, when you have an altar built and vessels crafted and animals prepared for sacrifice, suddenly Malachi's words sound less like poetry and more like prediction. The priesthood that served when the first temple fell has returned. The bloodline that scattered across the earth has regathered. And the DNA that traces back to Aaron is alive in young men who believe they'll soon stand where their ancestors stood. Not someday, soon, because every other piece is in place. The altar, the vessels, the red heifers approaching maturity, the Sanhedrin reformed, and now the priests proven by science to be who tradition always said they were. The biological proof, the genetic confirmation, the scientific validation of an ancient promise, all of it pointing to one unavoidable question. If God preserved the priesthood through 3,000 years of exile, what was he preserving them for? The answer might be unfolding right now in Jerusalem. While you were living your life in 2004, working, raising families, watching the news cycle spin, something extraordinary happened in a quiet stone building in Tiberias, Israel. Something that hadn't occurred in 1,590 years. 71 men gathered in secret. They wore traditional robes, they followed ancient protocols, and they reconstituted an institution that Rome had destroyed in 425 AD. The Great Sanhedrin, the supreme religious council of the Jewish people. The world barely noticed. A few obscure news articles, some dismissive commentary. Most people shrugged and moved on, but those who understand prophecy, they stopped cold. Because according to Scripture, certain things must be in place before the end times unfold, and one of those things is religious authority capable of making the decisions only the Sanhedrin can make. Decisions about the temple, about sacrifice, about recognizing the Messiah. For over 15 centuries, that authority simply didn't exist. Picture what that meant. Imagine if the United States Supreme Court had been disbanded in the 1800s, and for over 1,000 years, there was simply no highest court, no final authority, no one with the legal standing to make certain decisions. That's what happened to the Sanhedrin when the Roman Empire crushed the last remnants of Jewish religious autonomy. The line broke, the chain shattered, and for century after century after century, there was no one with the authority to say, yes, we can rebuild the temple. Yes, the sacrifice can resume. Yes, this man might be the Messiah we've waited for. Until 2004. The man who led this restoration was Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz, one of the most respected Talmudic scholars of the modern era. He didn't do this on a whim. He didn't wake up one morning and decide to play act at ancient rituals. He and the other rabbis who gathered that day in Tiberias, the same city where the Sanhedrin last met in 425 AD, believed they were fulfilling prophetic necessity. They believed the time had come. But here's what most people don't understand about the Sanhedrin. This isn't a symbolic organization. This isn't a historical reenactment society. These men make real decisions that affect real preparations for real events. Since 2004, the modern Sanhedrin has done something remarkable. They've been quietly, methodically, carefully preparing for the Third Temple. They've commissioned the Temple Institute to create the sacred vessels, the menorah, the table of showbread, the incense altar, all crafted to exact biblical specifications, gold-plated, ritually pure, ready. They've overseen the training of priests from the Levitical line, not someday, now, today. Young men learning the intricate choreography of temple service that hasn't been practiced in 2,000 years. They've debated and researched the precise location where the temple must stand. They've studied ancient measurements. They've consulted historical texts and archaeological findings. And they've made a determination about the red heifers. But we'll get to that in a moment, because first, you need to understand why this revival matters prophetically. The prophet Daniel saw visions of the end times. In Daniel 9:27, he describes a covenant, an agreement that a future ruler will make with Israel for 7 years. He will confirm a covenant with many for 1 7. In the middle of the 7, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering. Read that again slowly. A sacrifice that's ended must first be started. For 2,000 years, that verse created a prophetic puzzle. How could sacrifice be stopped if there's no temple to sacrifice in? How could an agreement about temple worship be broken if temple worship doesn't exist? The existence of the Sanhedrin answers part of that puzzle, because only the Sanhedrin has the religious authority to negotiate such a covenant. Only they can authorize the resumption of sacrifice. Only they can make agreements about temple worship on behalf of the Jewish people. Without the Sanhedrin, the prophecy can't unfold. With the Sanhedrin restored, it can. Now here's where it gets even more significant. In 2016, the Sanhedrin did something unprecedented. They called for the establishment of what they termed the Organization of 70 Nations, a council of representatives from the nations of the world based on the 70 nations described in Genesis 10. Why? Because ancient Jewish tradition holds that the third temple will be a house of prayer for all nations, not just for Israel, for everyone. The Sanhedrin believes that Gentile representatives should be involved in the temple's establishment. They're preparing for a global religious event. Think about that. While most of Christianity watches for the Antichrist to make a covenant with Israel, the Sanhedrin is actively preparing the framework for exactly such an agreement. They don't see it as sinister, they see it as necessary, a step toward the Messianic age. But what if they're preparing the stage for the wrong Messiah? What if the covenant they're ready to make, the one that authorizes temple worship and sacrifice, is the very covenant Daniel warned about, the one that will be broken halfway through a 7-year period? The Sanhedrin meets regularly now, not in secret anymore, but in plain sight. They issue statements, they make plans, they coordinate with the Temple Institute, with genetic researchers confirming priestly lineage, with agricultural programs we'll discuss shortly. In 2018, the Sanhedrin did something that sent shockwaves through the prophecy-watching community. They held an altar dedication ceremony, not a symbolic one, not a rehearsal, a real one, with real sacrifice. But that ceremony didn't happen in a vacuum. It required preparation. It required specific objects made in specific ways. It required understanding ancient techniques that had been lost for millennia. And it required stones, special stones, gathered from very specific places, shaped, or rather not shaped, in a very particular way. The smoke from that altar rose over Jerusalem on December 10th, 2018, the same city where smoke had risen from sacrifices for 1,000 years before Rome destroyed it all. History wasn't repeating, prophecy was resuming. And the Sanhedrin that authorized it, they're not done. They're not satisfied with an altar alone. They have plans, timelines, requirements that must still be met. 71 men in robes, holding authority that didn't exist for 15 centuries, making preparations for events that most of the world doesn't even know are coming. While you were scrolling through your phone, they were fulfilling Daniel's visions. But the altar was only the beginning, because sacrifice requires more than authority and more than a place to burn the offering. It requires purity, and for 2,000 years, that purity has been impossible to achieve. According to Numbers 19, without one specific thing, no priest can be purified, no service can be rendered, no sacrifice can be accepted. They needed ashes from an animal so rare, most people thought it was mythological.
Right now, in Israel, preparations are being made that cannot be reversed.
December 10th, 2018. The sun sets over Jerusalem, painting the ancient stones gold and crimson. Modern cars honk in the distance. Smartphones glow in 1,000 hands. The 21st century hums along, oblivious. But in a location the organizers deliberately kept semi-private, something from the distant past breaks into the present. An altar stands ready. Not a reconstruction, not a monument, not a display in a museum. A functioning altar built to biblical specifications, waiting for fire. The stones are massive, roughly hewn, unmortared, because Exodus 20:25 is explicit. If you make an altar of stones for me, do not build it with dressed stones, for you will defile it if you use a tool on it. These stones have never known the touch of iron. They were found, not carved, selected, not shaped, placed by hand according to measurements recorded by Josephus and preserved in the Mishnah. 4 priests approach,
wearing the white linen garments of their office. Not costumes, not ceremonial dress for a play. These are the actual garments described in Exodus 28, created by the Temple Institute under the authority of the Sanhedrin, preserved across millennia. Linen from a particular type of flax, woven in a specific way. Every thread, every measurement checked and rechecked against ancient texts. The youngest priest carries kindling, the second bears oil, the third holds a vessel containing fire from the previous day's altar, because sacred fire must never originate from common sources. It must be maintained, transferred, kept holy. And the fourth priest? He carries a lamb. The crowd watching, maybe 200 people, mostly Orthodox Jews, some Christian observers, a handful of confused journalists, falls silent. Because everyone present understands what they're witnessing. The resumption of something that hasn't happened in 1,948 years. The priests begin to chant in Hebrew, ancient words, passages from Leviticus that describe how the daily offerings must be conducted. The rhythm is strange to modern ears, not quite song, not quite speech, but something in between that carries across centuries. One priest places the wood on the altar with precise movements, not casual, not random, every log positioned according to patterns described in the Talmud. Another pours oil. The fragrance fills the air, pure olive oil, first pressing, prepared according to ritual requirements. The third priest touches the kindling with the sacred fire, and the flames rise, golden, bright, hungry. The fourth priest lifts the lamb. There's no fear in the animal's eyes. It was raised for this, selected from birth, examined for blemishes and found perfect. The knife is sharp. Ancient technique demands the cut be swift, clean, merciful. The priest has practiced this movement 1,000 times, even though this is only the second time he's performed it with an actual sacrifice. Blood falls on the altar stones, dark and red against the pale rock, and something shifts in the air that has nothing to do with temperature. You can watch videos of this event online. The quality isn't great, mostly filmed on phones, shaky footage, poor sound. But you can see it, the flames, the priests in their linen, the smoke beginning to rise. Smoke that carries with it 2,000 years of longing, of exile, of promises made and not yet fulfilled. Smoke that Daniel saw in his visions. Because here's what most people miss about that December night. The priests who performed this sacrifice weren't pretending it counted. They weren't engaging in theater. According to Jewish law, what they did was legitimate. Limited, yes. Incomplete, certainly, but valid. Because while the temple doesn't exist, the altar can. While the full sacrificial system can't operate, the daily offering can be made. While the nation of Israel isn't yet fully observant, the priesthood can still act on behalf of those who are. This wasn't dress rehearsal. This was phase 1. Rabbi Hillel Weiss of the Sanhedrin said afterward, "We are ready to build the temple today. All that's missing is the decision to do it." Think about that statement. Not "we're preparing," not "someday we'll be ready." Ready now, today, waiting only for permission. But let's back up for a moment, because that altar didn't appear overnight. The dedication ceremony in 2018 was the culmination of years of painstaking work. The Temple Institute, working under the authority of the Sanhedrin, began the altar project in 2015. They consulted archaeologists about the precise dimensions. They studied the writings of Maimonides, who detailed altar construction in his 12th century legal code. They examined geological surveys to find stones that had never been excavated with metal tools. Every measurement mattered. every detail carried theological weight. The altar base measures 5 cubits by 5 cubits. The height follows the stepped pattern described in Exodus, a ledge here, a narrowing there, dimensions that create a specific profile when viewed from the side. And when they finally assembled it for the first time in 2015, they held a practice ceremony, just the dedication, not actual sacrifice, not yet, because they needed to train the priests first. For 3 years, young Levites practiced the movements, the cuts, the prayers, the timing, how to approach the altar, how to place the wood, how to present the offering. Older rabbis coached them from texts, from diagrams, from memories of oral traditions passed down through generations of scholars who studied temple service even when temple service was impossible. And in 2018, they felt ready. The dedication ceremony that December night was witnessed by members of the Sanhedrin, representatives from Christian organizations, journalists from Israeli media, a French Catholic priest named Patrick Dubois, who understood the significance of what he was seeing. One witness described feeling like the ground beneath his feet had shifted, not physically, but spiritually, as if history itself had changed direction, as if countdown had begun. Since that night, the altar has been maintained. The priests continue to practice. Ceremonies are held periodically, not always publicized, not always open to observers, but happening. Small sacrifices, training exercises, refinement of technique, all in preparation for the day when it's not practice anymore, when the altar isn't sitting in some semi-private location, but on the Temple Mount itself, when sacrifice resumes not as exception, but as daily routine, when the words of Daniel 9:27 start their prophetic clock. In the middle of the 7, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering. For sacrifice to end, it must first begin, and now it has begun. Limited, partial, but begun. The Sanhedrin non-istis, the priests performing these ceremonies, know this. They're not naive. They understand the prophetic implications, though they interpret them differently than Christians watching from afar. They believe they're preparing for their Messiah's arrival, for the redemption of Israel, for the age of peace and divine presence returning to earth. They don't see the altar as a tool of the Antichrist. They see it as a beacon calling heaven's attention back to Jerusalem. But prophecy is often fulfilled by people who don't realize what they're fulfilling. The altar stands ready, the priests train daily, the sacred vessels wait in climate-controlled storage, wrapped in silk, unused but prepared. And high on the Temple Mount, the dome of the rock gleams golden in the sun, marking the place where Jewish tradition says the altar must ultimately stand. Between the current altar and that location lies a gap of politics, religion, and potential warfare that seems impossible to cross. Yet prophecy says it will be crossed, because the altar rising in 2018 was just the visible symbol of something deeper. The priesthood wasn't just practicing sacrifice technique. They were preparing themselves, purifying themselves, making themselves worthy to serve. And that purification requires something that hasn't existed for 2,000 years. Something so rare, so specific, that most rabbis considered it a theoretical requirement that would never actually be met. Until 5 animals were born in Texas.
Every Tuesday and Thursday, in a nondescript building near the old city of Jerusalem, young men gather before dawn. They're not there for a gym session or a business meeting. They're there to learn something their ancestors haven't practiced in nearly 2 millennia: how to be temple priests. The Temple Institute runs these training sessions with military precision, not because they're militant, but because there's no room for error. Every movement in temple service has meaning. Every gesture carries theological weight. Get it wrong, and according to biblical law, you could die. That's not hyperbole. Leviticus is explicit. Approach the altar incorrectly? Death. Use the wrong incense mixture? Death. Enter the Holy of Holies at the wrong time? Death. These young men, some still teenagers, others in their 20s and 30s, take it seriously. They practice for hours, the same movements over and over. How to hold the sacrificial knife, the angle of the cut, the speed, where the blood goes, how to arrange the wood, how to trim the lamp wicks, how to mix the incense. One student described it as learning choreography for a play that hasn't been performed in 2,000 years, except it's not a play, and you only get one chance to get it right, because they believe that chance is coming. Rabbi Yisrael Ariel, founder of the Temple Institute, walks among the students during training sessions. He's elderly now, but his eyes are sharp. He corrects postures, adjusts hand positions, quotes from memory the exact Talmudic passages that describe each ritual. He fought in the 1967 Six-Day War. He was among the paratroopers who liberated the Temple Mount. He stood at the Western Wall when Jews could pray there freely for the first time in 19 years, and he spent the decades since that moment preparing for the Temple's return. We don't know when, he tells his students, but we must be ready when the call comes. There will be no time to train, no time to practice. Either you know how to serve or you don't. And so they practice. In 2016, the Temple Institute held a full-scale rehearsal of the Passover sacrifice. Not just a few students in a classroom, over 300 priests in full ceremonial garments performing the complete ritual from beginning to end. They didn't use an actual lamb, not that time. They used a simulation, but everything else was real. The courtyard layout matched temple specifications. The vessels were the actual gold and silver items created for temple use. The prayers were authentic, the timing precise. Observers who attended said it felt surreal, like watching a historical documentary, except everyone was alive and the year was 2016. One priest interviewed afterward said something chilling. "We weren't pretending, we were remembering, and what you remember, you can restore." Since then, these rehearsals have continued, some public, most private, the priests refining their technique, building muscle memory, internalizing rhythms of service that their great-great-grandparents, 100 generations back, once knew by heart. But here's what keeps some prophecy watchers up at night. These men genuinely believe they're serving God. They're not villains in some cosmic drama. They're not knowingly preparing for the Antichrist. They're faithful Jews who've studied Scripture their entire lives, who pray daily for redemption, who see themselves as fulfilling their people's destiny. They believe the Messiah is coming. They believe the temple will be rebuilt. They believe sacrifice will resume and God's presence will return to Jerusalem. And they might be right about all of that, just wrong about the order of events. Because Christian eschatology teaches that the Antichrist comes first, that he makes a covenant allowing sacrifice, then breaks it, that these preparations, sincere as they are, set the stage for deception. But the priests don't see it that way. They see preparation as faithfulness. They see the resurrection of temple service as the natural conclusion to Israel's return to the land. They see prophecy being fulfilled, but through their interpretive lens, not Christianity's. Which raises an uncomfortable question. What if both are right? What if these preparations really are necessary for Messiah's coming, but the first one to arrive isn't the true one? The priests training in Jerusalem don't wrestle with that question. They're focused on their work, on perfecting their craft,
on ensuring that when the moment arrives, they're ready. And that moment, they believe, is closer than most people think. In 2022, the Temple Institute announced that priestly training had reached operational readiness. That phrase, borrowed from military terminology, is telling. They're not preparing for someday, they're prepared today, waiting only for the political and religious circumstances to align. But there's still one problem, one massive, seemingly insurmountable obstacle that even perfectly trained priests can't overcome. They're not pure. Not in the ritual sense. According to Numbers 19, anyone who's come into contact with death, and in Jewish law that means virtually everyone in the modern world, is ritually impure, contaminated, unfit to approach the altar or enter the temple. And the only remedy, the only purification ritual that can cleanse that impurity requires something specific, the ashes of a red heifer. Not brown, not spotted, not with even 3 miscolored hairs. Red, entirely red, female, never yoked, without blemish. An animal so rare that according to Jewish tradition, only 9 have existed since Moses received the law. 9 perfect red heifers in over 3,000 years. And the 10th, actually the 10th through 14th, would need to exist before the temple could function. For decades, it seemed impossible. Red heifers occasionally appeared, but they always developed disqualifying marks, a white hair, a black spot, some imperfection. The priests trained anyway, knowing they couldn't serve without purification, but preparing as if purification would somehow become possible. And then a phone call came from Texas. A cattle rancher named Byron Stinson had been watching his herd, and he'd noticed something unusual. 5 calves, all female, all unblemished, all completely red.
The requirements are absurd, almost impossible. A female cow entirely red, not reddish-brown, not auburn, red, like the color of clay, of brick dust, of blood dried in the sun. No more than 2 hairs of any other color on its entire body. Not 3, 2. 1 white hair? Acceptable, barely. 3 white hairs, the animal is disqualified. Never yoked, never used for work, never bred, never put under any form of control beyond basic handling. Without blemish, no scars, no broken bones that healed, no damage to its hide from thorns or barbed wire or anything else. And the color must remain pure until the animal is at least 3 years old, the age when it's eligible for sacrifice. These requirements, given in Numbers 19, seem designed to be unfulfillable. And yet, in September 2022, 5 red heifers arrived in Israel from a ranch in Texas. They were flown in on a special cargo flight, accompanied by handlers who'd been caring for them since birth, and delivered to a secure location in the Jordan Valley. The Sanhedrin examined them. Rabbis who'd studied the laws of the red heifer their entire lives inspected every inch of these animals, hair by hair, inch by inch, and they certified them, all 5, acceptable, kosher, fit for the ritual. Let that sink in for a moment. For 2,000 years, this seemed like a theoretical requirement, something in the law books that didn't matter because the temple didn't exist and wouldn't exist. And now there are 5 perfect candidates living under guard in Israel, being carefully maintained to ensure they remain unblemished. Byron Stinson, the rancher who raised them, is a Christian. He understands the prophetic implications of what he's done. In interviews, he's described feeling called to this work, breeding cattle specifically in search of red heifers that meet biblical requirements. "I'm not doing this for money," he said in one interview. "I'm doing this because prophecy matters, because God's word is true, and if he says these animals are needed, then someone needs to provide them."
The Temple Institute has been working with ranchers like Stinson for years, providing genetic guidelines, explaining the precise requirements, hoping against hope that the right combination of genetics would produce what they needed. And in 2022, it did. But here's what makes this even more significant. The heifers need to be at least 3 years old before they can be sacrificed. They arrived in Israel in September 2022. Do the math. Spring 2026. That's when they reach the eligible age. That's the window when the ritual can be performed. Now, the ritual itself is complex and strange and deeply ancient. Numbers 19 describes it in detail that sounds almost alien to modern readers. The red heifer is taken outside the camp, outside Jerusalem in modern application. A priest slaughters it, burns it entirely, hide, flesh, blood, everything, along with cedar wood, hyssop, and scarlet thread. The ashes are collected and mixed with water to create the water of purification. Anyone who's been contaminated by contact with death is sprinkled with this water on the 3rd day and the 7th day after contamination. Only then are they purified. Only then can they approach the temple. Without this ritual, no priest can serve. Without these ashes, no sacrifice can be offered. Without purification, there is no temple service. For 2,000 years, this has been the missing piece. Everything else could be prepared. The priesthood could be identified genetically, the vessels could be crafted, the altar could be built, the priests could train. But without red heifer ashes, none of it mattered. And now, suddenly, impossibly, that piece exists. The 5 heifers live under constant supervision. Cameras monitor them 24 hours a day. Rabbis visit regularly to inspect for any disqualifying marks, a scratch from a fence, a white hair appearing, anything that would render them unfit. They're not treated as ordinary cattle. They're handled minimally. Never yoked, never bred, never put to work. They graze in specially maintained pastures where thorns and sharp objects have been cleared. Their care is meticulous because there are no replacements waiting. These 5 are it. One rabbi involved in their care described the responsibility as overwhelming. He said, "We're preserving the possibility of the temple. If something happens to these animals before they can be used, we're back to waiting. Maybe another decade. Maybe another generation, maybe longer." The pressure is immense, and the timeline is specific. 2026. What's happening in 2026? What events might align with that date? No one knows for certain, but people are speculating. Political analysts watching Middle East peace negotiations, prophecy teachers calculating timelines, rabbis discussing the Messianic age. And all of them are aware that 5 perfect red heifers will reach their eligible age in spring of that year. Some Christian prophecy teachers have noted something unsettling. If Daniel's 70th week, the final 7 years before Messiah's return, begins with a covenant, and if that covenant allows sacrifice, then the red heifer ritual would need to happen first. You can't sacrifice without purified priests. You can't purify priests without red heifer ashes. You can't get red heifer ashes without a red heifer. And there's a 3-year window starting in 2026. This doesn't mean 2026 is the date. Prophecy doesn't work that way. Jesus himself said no one knows the day or hour. But it does mean the pieces are aligning in ways they've never aligned before. For the first time in 2 millennia, every single requirement for resuming temple sacrifice exists simultaneously. The priests are trained, the altar is built, the vessels are ready, the Sanhedrin has authority, Israel controls Jerusalem, and 5 red heifers wait in the Jordan Valley, their biological clocks ticking toward eligibility. Some Palestinians have taken notice. Articles in Middle Eastern media have called the red heifers a threat to the Al-Aqsa Mosque because the ultimate goal, openly stated by the Temple Institute, is to perform the red heifer ritual and then resume sacrifice on the Temple Mount itself, where the Dome of the Rock currently stands. The geopolitical implications are staggering, the religious tensions explosive, the prophetic significance undeniable, and the heifers graze, unaware that they're at the center of a convergence of prophecy, politics, and preparation that's been building for 2,000 years. Rabbi Azariah Ariel, son of the Temple Institute's founder, said in a 2023 interview, "We're not waiting anymore, we're ready. The red heifers are the final piece. When they're eligible, we can perform the purification. When purification is complete, we can resume service. When service resumes..." He trailed off, but the implication hung in the air. When service resumes, everything changes. 5 animals, born on a ranch in Texas, transported to Israel, guarded day and night, each one potentially the 10th red heifer in Jewish history, the one that makes the impossible possible, the one that opens the door to the third temple. But there's another door in Jerusalem, one that's been sealed for 500 years, a gate that's supposed to stay shut according to one interpretation of Ezekiel's prophecy, until someone specific passes through it. And recently, strange things have been happening at that gate.
Stand at the Mount of Olives and look west toward Jerusalem's old city walls. Your eye will catch it immediately. A gate different from all the others. Sealed, bricked up, silent. The eastern gate, called the Golden Gate in some traditions, rises from the Kidron Valley, its arches visible but blocked, its passage denied for more than 5 centuries. And according to prophecy, it's supposed to stay that way until one specific person walks through it. Ezekiel 44, 1-3 records a vision that's both beautiful and eerie. "Then the man brought me back to the outer gate of the sanctuary, the one facing east, and it was shut. The Lord said to me, 'This gate is to remain shut. It must not be opened. No one may enter through it. It is to remain shut because the Lord, the God of Israel, has entered through it.'" The passage continues, specifying that only the prince, interpreted by many as the Messiah, may sit in the gateway. And that gate has been sealed since 1541. The Ottoman Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent ordered it bricked up. Why? Historical records give practical reasons: defense, structural concerns. But Jewish and Christian tradition tells a different story. They say Suleiman knew the prophecy. He knew Jewish expectation held that the Messiah would enter Jerusalem through the eastern gate. He knew Christians believed Jesus would return the same way he left, from the Mount of Olives, through this very gate. So he sealed it, as if brick and mortar could stop prophecy. And then, perhaps to make absolutely certain, he placed a Muslim cemetery directly in front of the gate, because Jewish law forbids a Kohen, a priest from the priestly line, from walking through a cemetery, ritual contamination. If the Messiah is a Kohen, the logic went, he can't enter through the gate. Suleiman died in 1566. The gate remained sealed. Centuries passed. The bricks weathered but held. The cemetery expanded. Headstones multiplied. And the eastern gate stood silent, facing the Mount of Olives, where Jesus ascended, and where Zechariah 14 says his feet will touch down again. For nearly 500 years, nothing changed. And then, people started seeing things. It began with photographs, amateur shots, tourist pictures, nothing professional. People visiting Jerusalem, snapping photos of the old city walls, and later noticing something strange in their images. Lights. Unexplained lights near the eastern gate. Not street lights, not camera flare. Orbs of light, sometimes white, sometimes golden, hovering near the entrance gate or moving slowly across the stone. Skeptics dismissed it. Lens artifacts, reflections, dust particles catching flash. But the reports kept coming.
In 2015, a tour group from Ohio was visiting the Mount of Olives overlook at sunset. 17 people, all with phones, all taking pictures of the old city as it glowed in the fading light. 12 of those 17 people captured the same phenomenon in their photos, a bright light, almost like fire, positioned directly over the eastern gate. None of them saw it with their naked eyes, only the cameras caught it. One woman in the group described feeling an overwhelming urge to pray when she looked at the gate. "I didn't know why," she said later. "I'm not even particularly religious, but standing there, looking at those sealed arches, I felt like I was watching a door that was waiting, like something on the other side was patient, but ready." Then came the sounds. In September 2016, multiple residents of Jerusalem's Old City reported hearing what they described as trumpet blasts. Not car horns, not construction noise. Deep, resonant, sustained notes that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Some dismissed it as atmospheric phenomena, wind through the ancient stones, acoustic tricks in the narrow streets. But others noted that the sounds seemed to center near the eastern gate. Videos surfaced on YouTube, shaky footage, poor audio quality, but you can hear it. A low, powerful tone that rises and falls, unlike anything mechanical, unlike anything modern. Rabbi Yosef Berger, who serves at King David's tomb, was one of those who heard it. In an interview afterward, he said, "This was not a natural sound. I've lived in Jerusalem my entire life. I know the city's noises, construction, traffic, the Muslim call to prayer, everything. This was different. This was, I don't want to say supernatural, but I can't explain it naturally." The sounds have been reported periodically since then. Not constantly, not predictably, but enough times by enough different witnesses that dismissing all of them requires either deliberate skepticism or willful ignorance. And then the earthquakes started. Small ones, tremors really. Magnitude 3.0, 3.5, nothing catastrophic. But seismologists noted something peculiar about them. They clustered along the Mount of Olives fault line, the same fault that Zechariah 14 verse 4 describes splitting in half when the Messiah returns. On that day, his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives, east of Jerusalem, and the Mount of Olives will be split in two from east to west, forming a great valley. In 2018, an Israeli geological survey identified the Mount of Olives as one of the most seismically dangerous areas in Jerusalem. They warned that a significant earthquake could cause catastrophic damage, specifically mentioning the potential for the mountain to split along its natural fault line. Prophecy teachers noticed immediately, the scientific analysis describing exactly what Zechariah predicted 3,000 years ago. But here's what made it stranger. Some of the tremors, according to witnesses who felt them, seemed to emanate near the eastern gate itself. In March 2020, during the global COVID lockdowns when Jerusalem's streets were nearly empty, a security guard working near the western wall reported feeling a sustained vibration. Not an earthquake, something subtler, like the stones themselves were humming. He walked toward the source, following the sensation, and it led him to the eastern gate area. I put my hand on the wall near the gate, and I could feel it, a rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. I pulled my hand away, and it stopped. I put it back, and felt it again. He reported it to his superiors. They investigated, found nothing unusual. But the guard quit his job 3 days later. When asked why, he said, "Because something's waking up in there, and I don't want to be around when it fully opens its eyes." Dreams, that's the other phenomenon. Since 2015, there's been a documented increase in people, Christians, Jews, even some Muslims, reporting dreams about the Eastern Gate. Not identical dreams, but similar themes. The gate opening, light pouring through, a figure in white walking through the cemetery as if it doesn't exist, the graves parting before him. Some describe the dream as beautiful, others as terrifying. Most say they woke up crying without knowing why. Dr. Rachel Weinstein, a psychologist in Tel Aviv, began collecting these accounts after several of her patients independently described nearly identical dreams about the gate. "I'm not a religious person," she said in a 2021 interview. "I don't believe in prophetic visions, but I can't explain why people who've never met, who live in different countries, who don't follow the same news sources, are all dreaming about the same gate opening. The statistical probability alone is remarkable." She's documented over 300 such accounts. The dreams cluster around specific dates, though the dreamers don't know about each other and aren't coordinating. Jewish feast days, Passover, Yom Kippur, the Feast of Trumpets, dates that matter prophetically. In September 2023, during the Feast of Trumpets, a photographer doing a time-lapse project focused on the old city walls captured something that went viral in prophecy-watching circles. For 3 frames, just 3, less than a second of real time, the sealed eastern gate appeared to glow. Not brightly, not obviously, but unmistakably, the stones over the arches were luminescent. The photographer checked his equipment. No malfunction, no light source that could have caused it. Just 3 frames where sealed stone seemed to generate its own light. He posted the images online with the caption, "I don't know what I captured, but I feel like I wasn't supposed to see this." Skeptics have explanations for all of it. The lights are lens flares and atmospheric phenomena. The sounds are wind and acoustic tricks. The earthquakes are normal seismic activity. The dreams are confirmation bias and social contagion. And maybe they're right. Maybe 500 years of brick and mortar will stand forever. Maybe a Muslim cemetery can permanently block a prophetic entrance. Maybe Suleiman's attempt to prevent prophecy worked. Or maybe the stones remember. Maybe they remember when Jesus rode through that gate on a donkey with crowds waving palm branches and shouting Hosanna. Maybe they remember the glory of God filled Solomon's temple, visible through those eastern arches. Maybe they remember the promise that the one who left through that gate will return through it. And maybe, just maybe, what people are seeing
And hearing and feeling and dreaming isn't coincidence. Maybe it's anticipation. The Eastern Gate stands sealed tonight, tomorrow night, next week, next year. But Ezekiel saw it open. Zechariah saw feet standing on the mountain facing it. Jesus himself spoke from that mountain, promising to return. And between the sealed stone and the prophecy of its opening lies a tension that Jerusalem feels in its bones. Because Jerusalem isn't just any city. It's never been just geography and politics. It's something more. Something that makes empires obsess over it. Something that makes the whole world turn its attention to one small, ancient place. And it's about to get worse. Zechariah 12, 2-3. Read it slowly. "I am going to make Jerusalem a cup that sends all the surrounding peoples reeling. Judah will be besieged as well as Jerusalem. On that day, when all the nations of the earth are gathered against her, I will make Jerusalem an immovable rock for all the nations. All who try to move it will injure themselves." Written approximately 2,500 years ago, describing today's headlines. Think about the absurdity of Jerusalem's position in global consciousness. It's a city of 900,000 people, not huge, not a global economic center, not home to the world's resources or wealth. And yet, the United Nations has passed more resolutions about Jerusalem than about any other city on earth. More than Damascus, more than Baghdad, more than any city in China or Russia or anywhere else. Why? Why does a city smaller than San Antonio, Texas, dominate international diplomacy? Why do presidents and prime ministers and global organizations and hearing and feeling and dreaming isn't coincidence? Maybe it's anticipation.
The eastern gate stands sealed tonight, tomorrow night, next week, next year. But Ezekiel saw it open. Zechariah saw feet standing on the mountain facing it. Jesus himself spoke from that mountain, promising to return. And between the sealed stone and the prophecy of its opening lies a tension that Jerusalem feels in its bones. Because Jerusalem isn't just any city. It's never been just geography and politics. It's something more. Something that makes empires obsess over it. Something that makes the whole world turn its attention to one small, ancient place. And it's about to get worse. Zechariah 12, 2-3. Read it slowly. I am going to make Jerusalem a cup that sends all the surrounding peoples reeling. Judah will be besieged as well as Jerusalem. On that day, when all the nations of the earth are gathered against her, I will make Jerusalem an immovable rock for all the nations. All who try to move it will injure themselves. Written approximately 2,500 years ago, describing today's headlines. Think about the absurdity of Jerusalem's position in global consciousness. It's a city of 900,000 people, not huge, not a global economic center, not home to the world's resources or wealth. And yet, the United Nations has passed more resolutions about Jerusalem than about any other city on earth. More than Damascus, more than Baghdad, more than any city in China or Russia or anywhere else. Why? Why does a city smaller than San Antonio, Texas, dominate international diplomacy? Why do presidents and prime ministers and global organizations obsess over who controls its streets? Because prophecy said they would. The burdensome stone prophecy in Zechariah isn't metaphorical. It's playing out in real time, in measurable ways, in political realities that make no logical sense. In 2017, President Trump recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital and moved the American embassy there. The international response was immediate and furious. The UN General Assembly voted 128-9 to condemn the decision. 128 nations felt compelled to vote on where one country places its embassy. Let that sink in. When has the world ever cared so deeply about embassy locations? But it's Jerusalem, and Jerusalem is different. Every peace plan for the Middle East, every single one for the past 75 years, has ultimately foundered on the question of Jerusalem. Who controls it? Who has access to it? Whose capital it is? The Oslo Accords collapsed over Jerusalem. The Camp David Summit in 2000 failed over Jerusalem. Every attempt since, same result. The city that was supposed to be called peace, that's what Jerusalem means, has never known peace. And according to Zechariah, it never will. Not until the end. Not until all nations gather against it and the Messiah returns to defend it. But here's what's chilling. The prophecy isn't just that nations will care about Jerusalem. It's that they'll be injured by trying to control it. Look at the historical record. Babylon conquered Jerusalem in 586 BC. Powerful empire, massive army, total military dominance. Within 70 years, Babylon fell to Persia. Gone. Rome destroyed Jerusalem and the temple in 70 AD. The empire seemed invincible, but within 4 centuries, Rome collapsed. The Western Empire fragmented. The Eastern Empire became a shadow. The Byzantine Empire controlled Jerusalem for centuries, fell to Muslim conquest. The Crusaders took Jerusalem in 1199, massacring its inhabitants, establishing a Christian kingdom. It lasted less than 90 years before Saladin retook it. The Crusader states crumbled. The Ottoman Empire held Jerusalem for 400 years. In 1917, they lost it to the British. By 1922, the Ottoman Empire had ceased to exist.
Britain took control through the Mandate of Palestine, the empire that ruled a quarter of the globe. Within 30 years of taking Jerusalem, Britain had lost nearly all its colonies. The empire dissolved. Jordan occupied East Jerusalem from 1948 to 1967. In 6 days, Israel took it back. Jordan has never recovered that territory. Every empire that has controlled Jerusalem has fallen. Every single one. And the pattern continues today. Nations that pressure Israel over Jerusalem face consequences that seem disproportionate, almost supernatural. When the UN voted 128-9 to condemn the U.S. embassy move, prophecy watchers noted something. Many of those 128 nations faced significant crises in the years immediately following. Political instability, economic problems, natural disasters. Coincidence? Maybe, but the pattern is undeniable across history. Touch Jerusalem and you get hurt. Zechariah called it an immovable rock, and everyone who tries to move it injures themselves. But the prophecy goes further. It doesn't just say nations will care about Jerusalem or be injured by it. It says all nations will gather against it. All of them. Not some, not many, all. And we're watching that alignment happen now in ways that seemed impossible even 50 years ago. The Abraham Accords, signed in 2020, normalized relations between Israel and several Arab nations: Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, Morocco, Sudan. Peace agreements, right? Progress towards stability? But look at the fine print. Look at the underlying tensions. Every one of those agreements contains careful language about Jerusalem's status, about the Temple Mount, about religious access, because even nations making peace with Israel can't escape the Jerusalem question. Saudi Arabia has indicated willingness to normalize relations with Israel, but they've stated publicly that Jerusalem's status must be resolved first. Specifically, guarantees about the Al-Aqsa Mosque, about Palestinian claims, about preventing any change to the Temple Mount status quo. Even in peace, Jerusalem remains the sticking point.
And then there's the international religious attention, not just political, but spiritual. Islam considers Jerusalem the third holiest city. The Dome of the Rock marks where Muhammad supposedly ascended to heaven. Al-Aqsa Mosque has stood there since 705 AD. Judaism considers Jerusalem the holiest city. The Temple Mount is where Abraham offered Isaac, where Solomon built the first temple, where God's presence dwelt. Christianity reveres Jerusalem as where Jesus was crucified, buried, and resurrected, where he will return. 3 major world religions, all focused on one city, all claiming divine mandate, all with mutually exclusive goals for one specific location. The Temple Mount, called the Haram al-Sharif by Muslims, is the most contested piece of real estate on earth. 35 acres that could trigger global war. Because the Sanhedrin wants to build the temple there. The priests are training to serve there. The altar is ready to be moved there. The red heifers will enable purification there. But the Dome of the Rock stands there, and Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Waqf, the Islamic Authority, controls access, and any attempt to change that status triggers international crisis. In September 2000, Ariel Sharon visited the Temple Mount. Just visited, walked around, said some words. The Second Intifada erupted within days. Over 1,000 Israelis killed, 3,000 Palestinians killed, 5 years of violence, all triggered by one visit to one location. That's how volatile this piece of ground is. Now imagine not just a visit, but an actual attempt to build, to place an altar, to resume sacrifice. The political shockwaves would be immediate. the religious fury instantaneous, the potential for conflict unthinkable. And yet, prophecy demands it happens. Daniel describes sacrifice resuming and then being stopped. The Antichrist enters the temple and proclaims himself God. Revelation describes the outer court of the temple being trampled by Gentiles, all of which requires a temple on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. How does that happen? How do you go from the current razor-edge status quo to active Jewish worship on the site Muslims consider inviolable? Humanly speaking, it's impossible, but that's what makes it prophetic, because Jerusalem has always been impossible. Its survival is impossible. Israel's existence is impossible. The preservation of the Jewish people through 2,000 years of exile and persecution is impossible. The ingathering of exiles from over 100 nations, speaking dozens of languages, maintaining identity across millennia, impossible. And yet, Jerusalem stands. Israel exists. Hebrew, a dead language for centuries, is spoken on the street. The priesthood has been identified genetically. The temple preparations are complete. And all the nations of the earth turn their attention to this one city, unable to look away, unable to find peace, unable to resolve what prophecy says cannot be resolved until the end. Right now, tonight, diplomats are meeting in various capitals discussing Jerusalem, peace plans being drafted, pressure being applied, nations choosing sides, just like Zechariah said they would. The burdensome stone is getting heavier. And every piece we've discussed, the Sanhedrin, the priests, the altar, the red heifers, the Eastern Gate, the global obsession with Jerusalem, they're not separate events. They're threads, all part of the same tapestry, all weaving together into a picture that's becoming clearer by the day, a picture of convergence.
Something is happening in Jerusalem that has never happened before in human history. Not in 2,000 years, not since the last temple fell. Every piece is coming together at once, and the speed at which it's happening should take your breath away. Think about what we've just walked through. The Sanhedrin, gone for 1,600 years, suddenly reconvened in 2004. The priesthood, scattered to the four winds, their bloodline confirmed through DNA testing that didn't even exist a generation ago. An altar built according to exact biblical specifications, dedicated with fire from heaven in 2018. Priests training in secret, rehearsing ceremonies their ancestors last performed when Rome ruled the world. And 5 red heifers, perfect, unblemished, guarded day and night, their biological clock ticking toward 2026. Each of these elements alone would be remarkable, a curiosity, a footnote in religious news that most people would scroll past without a second thought. But together they form something else entirely. Let's lay them out like pieces on a table, like artifacts in a museum, except these aren't relics of the past, they're components of the future. The Sanhedrin, restored, meeting regularly, making legal decisions according to Torah law, preparing for the day when Israel will need religious courts that can operate a temple system. The priesthood, verified through genetics, trained in ancient rituals, ready to serve. Not in theory, in practice. They've already conducted rehearsals. They know the steps, the prayers, the precise movements required. The altar, built, dedicated, standing ready on the Mount of Olives, made from unhewn stones just as the law requires. Fire has already touched it. Blood has already been shed on it. It waits only for the moment it can be moved to its final location. The vessels, crafted by the Temple Institute according to biblical specifications, golden menorah,
silver trumpets, priestly garments woven with blue thread from a specific snail species that was thought extinct but was rediscovered. Incense prepared from the exact formula in Exodus, everything needed to resume temple service. The red heifers, 5 of them, born in Texas, raised in Israel, examined continuously for any blemish that would disqualify them, because without their ashes there is no purification. Without purification, no priest can serve. Without priests serving, the temple means nothing. Check the boxes, count the requirements. Everything is in place except one thing: access to the Temple Mount itself. And here's where it gets almost mathematically impossible. For 19 centuries, these elements couldn't come together. The Jewish people were scattered across the earth. No nation, no homeland, no access to Jerusalem. The priesthood lost track of their lineage. The ancient practices were preserved in books, but not in practice. The Temple Mount was controlled by foreign powers: Roman, Byzantine, Islamic, Crusader, Ottoman, British. Then 1948 happened. Israel became a nation again after 2,000 years. The odds of a people group surviving that long without assimilation, maintaining distinct identity, and reclaiming their ancient homeland, historians call it unprecedented. But even then, Jerusalem's old city remained in Jordanian hands until 1967, the Six-Day War, Israeli paratroopers reaching the Western Wall, the famous photograph of soldiers weeping at the stones. For the first time in 1,897 years, Jewish people controlled the Temple Mount. And that's when the prophetic clock started ticking in a new way. Because suddenly, impossibilities became possibilities. The Sanhedrin couldn't reconvene when Jewish people had no nation. But after 1967, after Israel controlled Jerusalem, the legal framework existed. And in 2004, it happened. The priesthood couldn't be verified when people were scattered across continents, but with modern genetics and the gathering of Jewish people back to Israel, the Cohen modal haplotype was discovered. The descendants of Aaron were identified. The altar couldn't be built when Jerusalem was under foreign control, but with Israel sovereign, with religious freedom, in 2018, it happened. The red heifers couldn't be raised when there was no reason to raise them, no temple, no priesthood, no realistic possibility of temple service. But now, Christian ranchers in Texas are breeding them specifically for this purpose, and Israeli rabbis are accepting them, and they're being guarded as the most valuable animals on earth. Every single element required for temple service to resume has come together in the same narrow window of time, not spread across centuries, not happening gradually over generations, all at once in rapid succession since 1948 and especially since 2004. The prophetic implications make the mind real, because Daniel's prophecy in chapter 9 speaks of 70 weeks decreed for Israel. Most scholars interpret these as weeks of years, 490 years total. 69 of those weeks have been fulfilled. The Messiah came. He was cut off exactly as Daniel predicted. But 1 week remains, 7 years, the final 7 years before Messiah establishes his kingdom. And Daniel 9:27 says something specific about those 7 years. He will confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, but in the middle of the week, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering. Stop right there. For sacrifice to end, it must first begin. There has been no sacrifice on the Temple Mount since 70 AD. For 1,955 years, no lamb has been slain, no incense has been offered, no priest has entered a Holy of Holies, because there is no Holy of Holies to enter. Daniel's prophecy requires that to change. Before the final 7 years can complete, before Messiah returns, before prophecy reaches its climax, the sacrifices must resume. They must be stopped in the middle of the week, but they have to start first. And every single element required for that to happen now exists, except permission to access the Temple Mount itself. And here's where it gets almost mathematically impossible. For 19 centuries, these elements couldn't come together. The Jewish people were scattered across the earth, no nation, no homeland, no access to Jerusalem. The priesthood lost track of their lineage. The ancient practices were preserved in books, but not in practice. The Temple Mount was controlled by foreign powers: Roman, Byzantine, Islamic, Crusader, Ottoman, British. Then 1948 happened. Israel became a nation again after 2,000 years. The odds of a people group surviving that long without assimilation, maintaining distinct identity, and reclaiming their ancient homeland, historians call it unprecedented. But even then, Jerusalem's old city remained in Jordanian hands. Until 1967, the Six-Day War, Israeli paratroopers reaching the Western Wall, the famous photograph of soldiers weeping at the stones. For the first time in 1,897 years, Jewish people controlled the Temple Mount. And that's when the prophetic clock started ticking in a new way. Because suddenly, impossibilities became possibilities. The Sanhedrin couldn't reconvene when Jewish people had no nation. But after 1967, after Israel controlled Jerusalem, the legal framework existed, and in 2004, it happened. The priesthood couldn't be verified when people were scattered across continents, but with modern genetics and the gathering of Jewish people back to Israel, the Cohen modal haplotype was discovered. The descendants of Aaron were identified. The altar couldn't be built when Jerusalem was under foreign control, but with Israel sovereign, with religious freedom, in 2018, it happened. The red heifers couldn't be raised when there was no reason to raise them, no temple, no priesthood, no realistic possibility of temple service. But now, Christian ranchers in Texas are breeding them specifically for this purpose, and Israeli rabbis are accepting them, and they're being guarded as the most valuable animals on earth. Every single element required for temple service to resume has come together in the same narrow window of time, not spread across centuries, not happening gradually over generations, all at once, in rapid succession, since 1948, and especially since 2004. The prophetic implications make
the mind real, because Daniel's prophecy in chapter 9 speaks of 70 weeks decreed for Israel. Most scholars interpret these as weeks of years, 490 years total. 69 of those weeks have been fulfilled. The Messiah came. He was cut off exactly as Daniel predicted. But 1 week remains, 7 years, the final 7 years before the Messiah establishes his kingdom. And Daniel 9:27 says something specific about those 7 years. He will confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, but in the middle of the week, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering. Stop right there. For sacrifice to end, it must first begin. There has been no sacrifice on the Temple Mount since 70 AD. For 1,955 years, no lamb has been slain, no incense has been offered, no priest has entered a Holy of Holies, because there is no Holy of Holies to enter. Daniel's prophecy requires that to change. Before the final 7 years can complete, before Messiah returns, before prophecy reaches its climax, the sacrifices must resume.
They must be stopped in the middle of the week, but they have to start first. And every single element required for that to happen now exists, except permission to access the Temple Mount itself, the political impossibility, the religious powder keg, the single piece that remains out of reach. But here's what should make you lean forward in your seat. Prophecy doesn't say it will be easy. It doesn't say the path will be clear. It says it will happen. Daniel saw it happen. He wrote it down 2,600 years ago. Jesus referenced it, standing on the Mount of Olives, looking at the temple that would be destroyed 40 years later. He spoke of the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place. Paul wrote about it in 2 Thessalonians, the man of lawlessness, the son of destruction, who will exalt himself above every god and sit in God's temple, proclaiming himself to be God. John saw it in Revelation, measuring the temple, observing the outer court given to the Gentiles for 42 months, watching 2 witnesses prophesy in Jerusalem during the tribulation period. Every major prophetic voice in Scripture points to the same moment: temple service resumed, a covenant made, sacrifices beginning, and then the ultimate desecration when the Antichrist reveals his true nature. The prophecy is clear. The question has always been, how? How could this happen in the modern world? How could an altar be built? How could priests be trained? How could ancient sacrifices resume in the 21st century? For most of the last 2,000 years, that question had no answer. It seemed impossible, fantasy, the kind of thing that made skeptics dismiss biblical prophecy as outdated mythology that couldn't possibly apply to the modern age. But now? Now the question isn't how, it's when. Because the how is already in motion. The pieces are already in place. The preparations are already complete. The Sanhedrin can authorize it. The priests can perform it. The altar is ready. The vessels are crafted. The purification is possible. Everything waits on one political moment, one shift in the balance of power, one crisis or opportunity or negotiation that grants access to the Temple Mount. And in the Middle East, political moments happen fast. Wars erupt without warning. Alliances shift overnight. Treaties are signed that were unthinkable months before. In 1967, no one expected Israel to capture Jerusalem. It happened in 6 days. In 2020, no one expected the Abraham Accords to normalize relations between Israel and multiple Arab nations. It happened in months. The impossible becomes possible with stunning speed in that ancient land. And every single preparation needed for the next impossible thing is already complete. The stage is set. The actors are in costume. The script has been written for millennia. We're just waiting for the curtain to rise. But there's something else you need to understand, something darker, something that makes this convergence both thrilling and terrifying. Because while Israel prepares for Messiah, prophecy warns that someone else is coming first. The priests don't know what they're preparing for, not really. They believe they're making ready for the Messiah, for the restoration of temple worship, for the glory of God to return to Israel the way it dwelt in Solomon's temple, a cloud of divine presence filling the sacred space. And perhaps in ways they don't yet understand, they are. But Scripture warns of a terrible detour on the way to that glorious destination. A man is coming who will deceive many, who will present himself as the answer to humanity's deepest longings, who will broker peace where there has been only war, who will solve the unsolvable. And for a brief, terrible season, even Israel will believe in him. This is where the convergence we've been tracking takes on a darker dimension.
Because every preparation we've documented, the Sanhedrin, the priesthood, the altar, the red heifers, the training, the vessels, all of it creates the exact conditions required for the Antichrist to fulfill his prophesied role.
Listen to how Daniel describes it in chapter 9, verse 27. He will confirm a covenant with many for 1 7. In the middle of the 7, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering. And at the temple he will set up an abomination that causes desolation, until the end that is decreed is poured out on him. He will confirm a covenant, not God, not the Messiah. He, the Prince who is to come, the one who emerges from the revived Roman Empire, according to Daniel's earlier visions. This figure will negotiate an agreement, a treaty, a covenant that allows Israel to do what seems impossible right now, rebuild the temple and resume sacrifices while the Dome of the Rock still stands on the Temple Mount. The political genius of such an agreement would be staggering, a peace deal that satisfies both Jewish and Muslim claims to the holy site, that allows temple worship without demolishing the third holiest site in Islam. It would take a master diplomat, a leader of unprecedented influence, someone both sides trust, someone who seems heaven-sent. And for 3.5 years it will work. Sacrifice and offering will resume, the altar will smoke, the priests will serve. Israel will rejoice that after 2 millennia, temple worship has been restored. The Sanhedrin will officiate, the red heifers will have served their purpose, the purified priesthood will follow every requirement of Torah. Everything will appear to be exactly as the faithful have longed for, until the middle of the week, because that's when the man who made it all possible will reveal his true nature. Paul describes the moment in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. He will oppose and exalt himself over everything that is called God or is worshipped, so that he sets himself up in God's temple, proclaiming himself to be God. In the temple, the one whose construction he authorized, the one whose worship he enabled, he will walk into the Holy of Holies and declare himself divine. Jesus called this the abomination of desolation, the ultimate desecration, the final blasphemy. And that's when the sacrifices will stop. Not by natural causes, not by political pressure, but by decree of the one who sits where only God should sit. Do you see the terrible irony? Israel is preparing for Messiah, training priests, building altars, raising perfect red heifers, gathering the vessels, organizing the Sanhedrin. But prophecy says the first one to benefit from all these preparations will be the Antichrist, the counterfeit, the deceiver, the son of perdition. He will use their longing against them. He will present himself as the answer to their prayers. He will enable temple worship, and then he will pervert it beyond recognition. This is why Jesus warned in Matthew 24, "At that time, if anyone says to you, 'Look, here is the Messiah,' or 'There he is,' do not believe it. For false messiahs and false prophets will appear and perform great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect." Even the elect. Even those who study prophecy. Even those who are watching and waiting. The deception will be that good. And every piece falling into place in Jerusalem right now creates the exact conditions that will make the deception possible. Think about it from Israel's perspective. For 2,000 years they've waited, longed, prayed, hoped. 3 times a day, observant Jews pray for the rebuilding of the temple. It's woven into their daily liturgy. Then a leader emerges who makes it possible, who negotiates the impossible treaty, who brings peace to the region, who allows temple worship to resume for the first time since the Romans destroyed it. Would it not seem like divine providence? Would they not hail him as anointed, as chosen, as perhaps the Messiah himself? The Sanhedrin would welcome him. The priests would offer sacrifices in gratitude for his intervention. The nation would celebrate for 3.5 years. And then the mask comes off. Revelation chapter 13 describes him as a beast rising from the sea, given power by the dragon, Satan himself, authority over every tribe and people and language and nation. Everyone whose name is not written in the Lamb's book of life will worship him. He will demand what only God deserves, and the temple, that beautiful, longed-for, carefully prepared temple, will become the stage for the greatest blasphemy in human history. This is the dark prophecy running parallel to the hopeful preparations. This is why watching Jerusalem right now produces such mixed emotions. Because yes, we're seeing prophecy fulfilled. Yes, the pieces are aligning with stunning precision. Yes, Scripture is proving accurate in real time. But the next chapter before Messiah's true return is not triumphant. It's tribulation, the time of Jacob's trouble, the final 7 years when deception reaches its peak and the world faces judgment. And every preparation happening in Jerusalem right now, every trained priest, every crafted vessel, every guarded red heifer brings that moment closer. Does this mean the preparations are wrong? That the Sanhedrin and the Temple Institute are working against God's purposes? Not at all. It means they're fulfilling prophecy in ways they don't fully comprehend. God uses human ambitions, hopes, and plans to accomplish His purposes. He is sovereign over history, even when people don't recognize His hand. The priests preparing for Messiah are also, unknowingly, preparing the stage for Antichrist. Both things are true, and the convergence accelerates toward a moment when the whole world will have to choose, when the deception will be so powerful that only those grounded in truth will recognize the lie. When Jerusalem, the burdensome stone, becomes the epicenter of spiritual war. But the preparations in the holy city aren't the only signs. The whole earth is groaning, the whole creation is speaking, and those with eyes to see are noticing things in the heavens and on the earth that echo the warnings Jesus gave 2,000 years ago.
Jerusalem is the clock, but the whole world is telling time. Jesus stood on the Mount of Olives 2,000 years ago, and his disciples asked him a question that echoes through the centuries. What will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? His answer covered everything. Wars, earthquakes, famines, pestilence, false prophets, the gospel preached to all nations, persecution of believers, love growing cold, and signs in the heavens. He told them to watch, to recognize the season, to see the fig tree budding and know that summer is near. And then he said something that should make us sit up straight. Truly I tell you, this generation will certainly not pass away until all these things have happened. Which generation? The one that sees these signs beginning to converge. The generation that witnesses the fig tree, often understood as a symbol for Israel, bud again after being dead for centuries. Israel became a nation in 1948. That generation is still alive, barely. The oldest survivors are in their 90s now. And in their lifetime, they've witnessed an acceleration of prophetic signs unlike any previous generation in history. Start with the wars. Jesus said there would be wars and rumors of wars. And yes, every generation has seen conflict. But the scale changed in the 20th century. 2 world wars, the atomic bomb giving humanity the power to destroy itself. Regional conflicts erupting constantly in the Middle East, always centered around Israel. The nations aligned exactly as Ezekiel 38 predicted. Russia to the north, Iran, ancient Persia rising as Israel's primary enemy, Turkey playing both sides, alliances forming that would have seemed impossible a generation ago. Then the earthquakes. Seismologists report that earthquake frequency and intensity have increased. Some dismiss this as better detection technology, but the numbers are striking. Major earthquakes are more common now than in previous centuries. The earth itself seems restless. Jesus said there would be famines, And despite modern agricultural technology, despite abundance in some regions, famine still stalks the earth. Climate instability, supply chain disruptions, conflicts that prevent food distribution, millions going hungry while others waste food. Pestilence, plagues, disease outbreaks spreading globally with unprecedented speed. 2020 proved how quickly a virus can shut down the entire world, how fast normalcy can vanish, how readily populations accept restrictions that would have seemed unthinkable before. And technology has created conditions that make other prophecies suddenly plausible. Revelation 13 speaks of a mark without which no one can buy or sell, a global economic system controlled by a central authority. That sounded like science fiction for most of church history. Not anymore. Digital currency, biometric identification, surveillance systems that track every movement, social credit scores determining access to services. The infrastructure for a mark of the beast system already exists, it just hasn't been fully implemented. Revelation 11 describes 2 witnesses killed in Jerusalem, whose bodies lie in the street for 3.5 days, while the inhabitants of the earth will gloat over them and will celebrate by sending each other gifts, because these 2 prophets had tormented those who live on the earth. How would the whole earth watch 2 bodies in Jerusalem? For most of history, that verse made no sense. Now, live streaming, satellite television, social media, the whole world can watch anything happening in Jerusalem in real time. Prophecy that seemed impossible has become mundane. But beyond the earth, the heavens themselves seem to be speaking. Joel chapter 2 verses 30 through 31 declares, "I will show wonders in the heavens and on the earth, blood and fire and billows of smoke. The sun will be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord." Blood moons, total lunar eclipses that turn the moon red, have occurred throughout history. But between 2014 and 2015, 4 blood moons occurred on Jewish feast days, Passover and Sukkot, 2 years in a row. A tetrad, astronomers call it. Coincidence? Perhaps. But the last time that pattern occurred was 1967, the year Jerusalem came under Israeli control. And before that, 1949-1950, right after Israel became a nation. The heavens marking moments of prophetic significance. Solar eclipses crisscrossing America in 2017 and 2024, forming an X over the heartland. Unprecedented cosmic events, planets aligning in rare configurations. Do these things prove the end is near? Not by themselves, but combined with everything happening in Jerusalem, with the geopolitical alliances, with Israel back in the land after 2,000 years, with temple preparations accelerating, the convergence becomes harder to dismiss as coincidence. Jesus said to watch. He compared it to birth pains, contractions that come closer together and more intense as the moment of delivery approaches. Isolated signs aren't necessarily significant, but when they start coming faster, overlapping, intensifying, that's when you know the birth is imminent. And that's what we're seeing now. Not one sign, not 2, not a scattered handful across centuries. All of them at once, accelerating. The Sanhedrin restored, the priesthood verified, the altar built, red heifers raised, Jerusalem the focus of international obsession, nations aligned as predicted, technology enabling previously impossible prophecies, natural disasters increasing, Israel surrounded by enemies, yet surviving. Every piece moving into position simultaneously. This isn't about setting dates. Jesus himself said no one knows the day or hour. But he also rebuked the Pharisees for not recognizing the time of his first coming, for missing the signs that were right in front of them. And he warned his followers not to make the same mistake. When these things begin to take place, stand up and lift up your heads.
The stones don't care if you're watching. The priests will continue their preparations whether you pay attention or not. The red heifers will reach their 3rd year right on schedule. The Sanhedrin will meet in their chambers,
debating, planning, waiting for the moment that prophecy demands. History moves forward, the clock ticks, and most of the world sleeps through the most significant moment in human history since the resurrection. But you're not most of the world. You're here. You're watching. You see what others miss. While your neighbors scroll through their phones, chasing distraction after distraction, you've spent the last hour and a half connecting dots that span millennia. You've watched ancient prophecy materialize in modern Jerusalem. You've seen the impossible become inevitable. The question isn't whether these things are happening. They are, right now, today. The question is what you do with what you know, because knowledge creates responsibility. Jesus told a parable that makes more sense today than ever before. 10 virgins waiting for a bridegroom. All of them knew he was coming. All of them had lamps. All of them intended to be ready. But 5 were wise and 5 were foolish. The difference wasn't knowledge. They all knew the bridegroom would arrive. The difference was preparation. The wise ones brought extra oil. The foolish ones assumed they had time. And when the bridegroom came at midnight, when he arrived at the hour no one expected, 5 were ready, 5 were not. The door closed, and no amount of knocking could open it again. You know this story, but have you ever noticed what it doesn't say? It doesn't say the foolish virgins didn't believe. It doesn't say they were wicked or rebellious or faithless. They were simply unprepared. They saw the signs, they knew what was coming, but they didn't think it would be now. Not yet. There's still time. Until there wasn't. Right now, somewhere in Jerusalem, a priest is studying the ancient texts, memorizing the movements his ancestors performed 2,000 years ago, practicing the prayers in the exact cadence prescribed by Scripture. He's preparing for something most people think will never happen, but he knows better. He's seen the pieces align. He's watched the prophecies shift from impossible to inevitable. He's not hoping it might happen someday. He's training because he knows it will happen soon. And when that day comes, when the call goes out, when the moment arrives that Daniel saw and Ezekiel described and Zechariah proclaimed, there will be no time to prepare. You're either ready or you're not. The door is either open or closed. This isn't about fear. This is about reality. The same God who preserved the priestly bloodline for 2,000 years is the same God who keeps his promises to you. The same God who orchestrated the return of Israel to the land in 1948 is the same God who said he would never leave you nor forsake you. The same God who is setting the stage for prophecy's final act is the same God who holds your life in his hands. And he's not playing games. He's not toying with humanity. He's keeping appointments that were scheduled before the foundation of the world. The watchers see what others miss, not because they're smarter or more spiritual or more deserving, but because they're paying attention. Because when Jesus said watch, they took him seriously. Because when Paul said be alert, they didn't hit snooze. The world is full of distractions designed to keep you from watching. Entertainment that never ends, news cycles that never stop, digital noise that drowns out the signal, all of it conspiring to make you look anywhere except at the signs Jesus specifically told you to watch for. When you see these things beginning to take place, he said, stand up and lift up your heads, because your redemption is drawing near. Not someday, not eventually, not in some distant generation. When you see these things, and you're seeing them right now, the fig tree is blooming, the branches are tender, the leaves are appearing, summer is near. Do you feel it? That sense that everything is accelerating, that the pace of prophetic fulfillment is quickening, that things which used to take centuries now unfold in years, months, weeks? You're not imagining it. The birth pains are intensifying, the contractions are closer together. The signs Jesus described are no longer scattered across history. They're converging, overlapping, multiplying. And just like a woman knows when the final moments before birth arrive, those who are watching know what this means. The question isn't if anymore. It's not even when exactly. The question is, are you ready? Not ready as in perfect, not ready as in sinless, not ready as in you've achieved some level of spiritual mastery, but ready as in your lamp is trimmed, your oil is sufficient, your hope is anchored, your faith is active, your eyes are open. Ready as in when the bridegroom comes at midnight, you won't be caught sleeping, because Jerusalem is preparing, the priests are training, the altar stands ready, the red heifers are growing, the Sanhedrin is organizing, the world's attention is fixated on one tiny piece of land, and the eastern gate remains sealed, waiting, just like you should be.
Right now, as you watch this, the sun is setting over Jerusalem. The golden light catches the dome of the rock, glinting off its crown like a warning. Shadows stretch across the Temple Mount, the same shadows that have fallen across those ancient stones for millennia. Evening prayers echo from minarets, Torah readings drift from synagogues, and somewhere, in a place most people will never see, priests gather to practice rituals the world thought were dead. But nothing in Jerusalem ever truly dies. It just waits. The altar doesn't look like much in photographs, just stones carefully arranged, unhewn, exactly as the law prescribes. But it's not the stones that matter, it's what they represent. For sacrifice to stop, it must first start. Daniel saw it, the covenant with many, the sacrifices beginning, 3.5 years of offerings, and then the abomination, the desolation, the moment when the man who came promising peace reveals who he really is. The stage is set for that moment now, not just set, prepared, rehearsed, ready. 5 red heifers graze in the Negev desert. Their biological clock is precise. By 2026, they'll reach the perfect age, the age when their ashes can purify the priests who will enter the Holy of Holies, the priests who will stand where no man has stood for 2,000 years. Unless something stops them, unless politics intervenes, unless conflict erupts, unless the powder keg that is the Temple Mount finally explodes. But prophecy doesn't fail. Empires have tried to stop it. Rome tried, Babylon tried. Every kingdom that ever touched Jerusalem tried to write their own ending. They're all gone, and Jerusalem remains. The Sanhedrin meets in quiet rooms, away from cameras, away from headlines. They discuss things most people wouldn't believe, ancient requirements, modern preparations, the covenant that must be made, the leader who will make it. He's out there now, somewhere in the world, rising, gaining influence, perfecting his message of peace and unity. He doesn't know yet what role he'll play. He doesn't know that he'll stand in the temple and demand worship, that he'll break the covenant he made, that he'll stop the sacrifices he authorized. But it's all written, every moment, every detail. Paul saw him, the man of lawlessness, the one who opposes and exalts himself above every so-called God, the one who takes his seat in the temple, proclaiming himself to be God. Can't happen without a temple. Can't have a temple without priests. Can't have priests without purification. Can't have purification without the red heifer. Every piece is in place, or almost. The eastern gate still stands sealed, Suleiman's attempt to thwart prophecy now crumbling with age. Ezekiel said it would remain shut until the prince comes, until the one whose right it is to enter passes through. People have reported seeing lights there at night, unexplained, undeniable. Cameras have captured them, tourists have witnessed them. No one can explain them. And the Mount of Olives continues to split, slowly, measurably. The fault line grows wider each year. The same mountain Zechariah said would split in two when Messiah's feet touch it.
2,000 years ago, he ascended from that mountain. The disciples watched him rise, and as they stared into heaven, angels appeared with a message that echoes through the centuries. This same Jesus who was taken up from you into heaven will come in the same way as you saw him go. From the Mount of Olives, through the eastern gate, to the Temple Mount. And every preparation happening right now, every priest training, every altar built, every sacrifice planned, all of it is setting the stage for that moment. The moment when prophecy stops being future and becomes present. When the sealed scrolls open. When the countdown.
During the Feast of Sukkot, something happened in Jerusalem that the world has already forgotten.
5 signs, 1 city, 0 coincidence. 5 impossible things are happening in Jerusalem right now. Not symbolic, not metaphorical, actually happening, physically, measurably, documented. And according to prophecy written over 2,000 years ago, these 5 things had to align before the final countdown could begin. First sign, the priesthood has returned. Men with proven genetic lineage to Aaron, the first high priest of Israel. DNA confirmed. 3,000 years of unbroken bloodline. They're not studying history, they're training for temple service, learning sacrificial rituals, memorizing every detail from ancient texts, as if they know they'll need this knowledge soon. Second sign, the altar stands ready. In 2018, a group built a biblically accurate altar for burnt offerings, not in a museum, not as art, as a functioning platform constructed exactly according to the specifications given to Moses. Unhewn stones from Jerusalem's hills, the right dimensions, the correct design. They've already conducted rehearsal ceremonies. Fire has burned on its surface. Third sign, the sacred vessels exist. Golden menorahs, silver trumpets, priestly garments woven according to Exodus chapter 28, incense altars, basins. Everything needed for temple worship has been recreated by the Temple Institute in Jerusalem. Ready, waiting, complete. Fourth sign, 5 red heifers are alive in Israel. Not random cattle, specific animals bred to meet the exact requirements from Numbers chapter 19. Without blemish, pure red, needed for the purification ritual before temple service can begin. They're being guarded 24 hours a day, and in 2026, they reach the perfect age for sacrifice. Fifth sign, the council has reformed. The Sanhedrin, the supreme religious authority that governed Israel's spiritual life for centuries, disbanded after Rome destroyed the temple in 70 AD, gone for nearly 2,000 years. Except they came back in 2004. 71 rabbis and scholars meeting in Tiberias, the same city where the last Sanhedrin convened before disappearing into history. They have one stated mission: prepare for the rebuilding of the third temple. Now here's where this gets unsettling. Each of these 5 signs alone would be remarkable, but all 5 existing at the same time? That's never happened before. Not in the entire span of Jewish history since the Second Temple fell. For 2,000 years, Israel had none of these things. No priesthood, no altar, no vessels, no red heifers, no Sanhedrin. Now they have all 5, simultaneously. And the prophet Daniel wrote about a specific sequence of events that would unfold when these preparations were complete. A covenant made, a sacrifice begun, and then, in the middle of 7 years, something that would shake the world. He called it the abomination of desolation. Jesus referenced it, warned his followers to watch for it, said, "When you see it happen, you'll know the end is near." But before any of that can happen, the stage has to be set, the pieces have to be in place, the preparations have to be complete. And in our lifetime, in this generation, all 5 signs are converging in Jerusalem. The city hasn't seen anything like this in 2 millennia, and according to the prophets, once all 5 signs appear together, a clock starts ticking, not metaphorically, actually. Daniel called it 70 weeks, a period of precisely defined time leading to a precisely defined conclusion. And somewhere in Jerusalem right now, that clock may have already begun its countdown. You won't see this on the evening news. World leaders aren't discussing it at summits, but in the shadow of the Temple Mount, preparations continue, quietly, systematically, prophetically. 5 signs, 1 city, and 0 chance it's all coincidence. Because prophecy doesn't deal in coincidence, it deals with appointments, specific times, predetermined moments. And every prophet who wrote about the last days said to watch Jerusalem, watch for these signs, and when you see them converging, look up. Because what comes next isn't written in newspapers. It's written in Daniel, in Ezekiel, in Revelation, and it's unfolding right now.
Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more awe-inspiring stories of faith, survival, and miracles.
The red heifers arrived in Israel on September 15, 2022. 5 animals, flown from a ranch in Texas, met at the airport by rabbis, security personnel, and a veterinary team that had been preparing for months. The media barely noticed. A few religious news sites ran brief stories, then silence. But in certain circles in Jerusalem, that day marked something far more significant than another livestock shipment. It marked the beginning of a countdown that's been anticipated for 2,000 years. Because these aren't ordinary cattle. According to Numbers chapter 19, before any priest can serve in the temple, before any sacrifice can be offered on the altar, a specific purification ritual must be performed, and that ritual requires the ashes of a red heifer, not brown, not spotted, completely red, without blemish, never yoked, never worked. The requirements are so specific that finding even one animal that qualifies is extraordinarily rare. These 5 heifers were born red, examined constantly, monitored for any disqualifying mark. 3 years of careful breeding produced them, and now they're in Israel, grazing in a secure location in the Negev desert, watched 24 hours a day by guards and cameras. Because if anything happens to these animals before they reach maturity, the entire timeline shifts. The Temple Institute explains it simply on their website. The red heifer is the key to reinstating biblical purity. Without it, access to the Temple Mount for divine service remains impossible. Divine service, not symbolic worship, not prayer from a distance, actual temple service, sacrifices on an altar, priests in the Holy of Holies, the system described in Leviticus, dormant since 70 AD, waiting to restart. And the biological clock determining when that can happen is ticking inside 5 animals that most of the world doesn't even know exist. Here's the timeline that matters. A red heifer must be at least 3 years old for the ritual. According to Jewish law, that's when the animal reaches maturity. Before 3 years, it's too young. After a certain age, it becomes too old, and small imperfections that disqualify it may appear. The window is precise, the timing is critical. Do the math. September 2022 arrival, 3 years forward, September 2025 would mark the earliest possible date for the ritual. We're past that now, which means any day, according to biblical law, these heifers could be used. But there's another factor. The priests preparing to perform this ceremony want everything perfect, not just legally acceptable, perfect. So they're watching, waiting, consulting with rabbis and scholars about the exact optimal moment. Sources close to the Temple Institute suggest they're looking at spring 2026, specifically around Passover, the same season when the original Passover lamb was sacrificed in Egypt, the same season when Jesus was crucified, the same season when, according to prophecy, the final redemption is supposed to begin. Passover 2026. Mark it. But here's what makes this even more significant. The red heifer isn't the only biological clock running.
In Jerusalem, young men in their 20s and 30s are training for priesthood, Kohanim, confirmed through genetic testing as descendants of Aaron. They're studying the ancient texts, learning the rituals, practicing the movements. Their bodies are the vessels through which this service will be performed. They can't do this forever. There's a window of physical capability, peak years for the demanding work of temple service, lifting animals, standing for hours, performing intricate rituals with precision. The generation currently training won't wait forever. They're ready now, in their prime, and their readiness coincides almost perfectly with the maturation of the 5 red heifers. 2 biological clocks, both reaching their optimal moment simultaneously. What are the odds? Then there's the political clock. Right now, Israel has a government coalition that includes religious parties with significant influence. These groups support temple preparations. They're not actively pushing for immediate access to the Temple Mount, but they're not opposing the groundwork either. Political coalitions shift. Elections happen. The current window of religious influence may not last, so there's pressure, not just spiritual, practical, political, a sense that conditions favorable for these preparations might not exist in 5 years or 10 years, but they exist now. And then there's the geologic clock. Seismologists have been warning for years that the Dead Sea Transform Fault, which runs directly beneath Jerusalem and the Mount of Olives, is overdue for a major earthquake. Studies suggest a significant event is statistically likely within the next decade. The prophet Zechariah described this earthquake. He said when the Messiah returns, his feet will touch the Mount of Olives, and the mountain will split in 2, east to west, creating a valley. Geologists confirm that the fault line runs exactly east to west through the Mount of Olives. If it ruptures, the mountain would split precisely as Zechariah described, 25 centuries before anyone understood plate tectonics. So you have 4 clocks ticking simultaneously: biological, physical, political, geological, all of them pointing to a window between now and 2026. The red heifers reaching maturity, the priests reaching their prime, the political conditions favorable, the fault line building pressure. 4 independent timelines converging on the same narrow window. And in Jerusalem, preparations continue. The altar stands ready, the vessels are complete, the Sanhedrin meets regularly, and 5 red animals graze in the desert, their DNA tested, their pedigrees confirmed, their purpose singular. They don't know they're part of prophecy. They're just cattle, eating grass, growing toward a date marked on calendars in Jerusalem. But the men watching them know. The priests training for the ritual know. The rabbis calculating the timelines know. 2026 isn't just another year, it's a convergence point, when biological possibility meets prophetic necessity. And once that ritual is performed, once those ashes exist, the final barrier to temple service disappears. Then comes the question nobody wants to ask, the question that keeps Israeli security officials awake at night, the question that has the potential to ignite the entire Middle East. What happens when someone actually tries to sacrifice on the Temple Mount?
35 acres. That's all it is. A limestone plateau in the middle of Jerusalem. Roughly the size of 20 city blocks. You could walk around its perimeter in 15 minutes. And yet, this small patch of ground has more diplomatic files, more UN resolutions, more security protocols, and more potential for global conflict than any other location on Earth. The Temple Mount, Haram al-Sharif, the noble sanctuary. Even its name is contested. To Jews, it's the holiest site in Judaism, the place where Abraham bound Isaac, where Solomon built the first temple, where the presence of God dwelt in the Holy of Holies, the geographical center of their faith for 3,000 years. To Muslims, it's the third holiest site in Islam, the place where Muhammad ascended to heaven on the night journey, home to the Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque, sacred ground for over 13 centuries. 2 religions, 2 claims, one mountain. And caught between them, every nation on earth watching nervously because they know what happens if this powder keg ignites. Right now, access to the Temple Mount is controlled by an Islamic trust called the Waqf, under Jordanian oversight. Israel controls security around the perimeter, but doesn't interfere with religious administration on the mount itself. This arrangement, called the status quo, has held since 1967, when Israel captured Jerusalem during the Six-Day War. For nearly 60 years, it's been a fragile balance. Jews can visit the mount but cannot pray there. No religious objects, no ritual items, no visible acts of worship. Israeli police enforce this strictly to prevent riots. Muslims pray there freely. 5 times a day, the call to prayer echoes from Al-Aqsa's minarets. The Dome of the Rock, with its golden roof, dominates Jerusalem's skyline. This is the compromise, the arrangement that keeps the peace. But it's breaking down. Over the past 5 years, the number of Jews visiting the Temple Mount has increased dramatically. Religious groups that once avoided the site out of concerns about ritual purity are now organizing regular visits. Some rabbis who previously forbade stepping on the mount have changed their positions. Why? Because preparations for temple service are advancing, and at some point the question becomes unavoidable. If you have priests, an altar, vessels, and red heifer ashes, where exactly do you plan to use them? Not in some symbolic location, not in a replica built elsewhere, on the mount itself, where the temple stood, where prophecy says the third temple will rise. The Israeli government knows this is coming. They've been trying to manage it, control the pressure, maintain the status quo, but the pressure builds. In 2022, the Temple Institute announced they had completed training programs for over 200 Kohanim, priests ready to serve. In 2023, they conducted a full Passover sacrifice rehearsal near the mount, complete with fire, blood, and wine. Each year, the demonstrations grow larger, more organized, more confident, and each time, the response from the Muslim world grows louder. The Palestinian Authority has warned repeatedly that any attempt to alter the status quo on the Temple Mount will trigger a religious war. Jordan, as custodian of the Islamic holy sites, issues condemnations. Turkey's president calls attempts at Jewish prayer on the Mount a red line. From Tehran to Istanbul to Cairo, millions watch Jerusalem with growing anxiety, because they understand what many in the West don't. This isn't about politics, it's about identity. It's about promises made by God, and people don't compromise on those. The prophet Zechariah saw this exact scenario. He wrote that Jerusalem would become a cup of trembling for all surrounding peoples, that it would be a burdensome stone that injures everyone who tries to move it. Read the news from the last decade. Count how many peace plans have failed, how many summits have collapsed, how many agreements have dissolved into violence.